Good afternoon, 6th grade history class. It is Friday, y'all. That means we are about to face the end of the weekend after a long, hard work of studying and teaching, I hope. Please make sure you're doing this work. Don't waste your weekends doing it. But we are on Friday, we are on page 261, chapter 14.5. The 20th century comes to a close. We're about to welcome the 2000s in our history class. But before we do, we still have some last little bits of information to read about and learn about. So let's talk about President Bill Clinton. Now, President H.W. Bush, we had read about him. Well, what happened? Why did he lose the presidency this time around? Well, President Bush had made a promise. He said, "Read my lip, no new taxes." Well, he passed some new taxes. And he learned very quickly people remember promises. And as a result, he wasn't elected for a second term, but instead, President Bill Clinton gets to become president. So before this presidential election in 1992, both Democratic Party candidate Bill Clinton and independent candidate Ross Perot claimed that the nation was in an economic crisis. With the conservative vote split between President Bush and Ross Perot, who had campaigned as a conservative, William Bill Clinton won the election with only 43% of the popular vote. He became the nation's 42nd president. During his presidency, Bill Clinton sent American troops on UN and NATO peacekeeping missions to the nations of Somalia, Bosnia, and Haiti. He worked for greater cooperation with Communist China and shared valuable missile technology with them. He also attempted to open relations with Communist Cuba. President Clinton hosted peace talks in Washington with the Israeli and Palestinian leaders in 1993. As a result of negotiations, they agreed to create an independent Palestinian state in the Gaza Strip and Jericho. Meanwhile, the Clinton administration reduced the American military dramatically, decreasing the number of ships, aircraft, weapons, and troops. Bill Clinton believed that military issues could be resolved simply through talking. He didn't believe really in the use of force and violence. He believed that a couple of words, a couple of, handshakes, fist bumps, you could solve any dispute with talking it out. During the 1990s, however, Americans witnessed increased displays of terrorism. On February 26, 1993, Islamic terrorists planted a bomb at the World Trade Center, a large building in New York City, killing 6 people and injuring over 1,000. On April 19, 1995, a bomb exploded outside a federal city building in downtown Oklahoma City, killing 168 people. This time the terrorist was an American, Timothy McVeigh, who was convicted and executed for his crime. Terrorist activities increased against Americans abroad as well. In 1998, 258 lives were lost in 2 explosions which destroyed the American embassies in Tanzania and Kenya. The Islamic radical Osama bin Laden and al-Qaeda terrorist groups were behind these attacks. In October 2000, al-Qaeda attacked again, this time bombing the American destroyer USS Cole while she was at port in Yemen. 17 U.S. sailors lost their lives in this attack. But let's take a step back from terrorism and talk about how this is also known as the information age. The 1980s ushered in an age of increased computer technology. By 2000, half of all U.S. households owned a computer. The development of the World Wide Web, a new information superhighway introduced in 1991, enabled computer access to the Internet, or the World Wide Web. The Internet is a high-speed network of information that can be transferred from computer to computer around the world. Bill Clinton's integrity, however, was questioned during the 1992 presidential campaign. Rumors had circulated about his immoral behavior with a woman and his illegal business dealings. During the investigation into these business dealings, known as the Whitewater investigation, President Clinton lied to a grand jury regarding his immoral conduct with a young woman who worked at the White House. This is known as perjury. Congress impeached him for this perjury and obstruction of justice. If a president is impeached by the House, the matter, remember, goes to a trial before the Senate to determine if he should be removed from office. But the Senate voted not to remove him from office. President Clinton became the 2nd president in United States history to be impeached. Andrew Johnson was impeached in 1868. Really, technically the 3rd, because you need to count Richard Nixon. Public schools, which had continued to decline academically, also had a drastic decline in morality. On the morning of April 20th, 1999, 2 students walked into Columbine High School in Littleton, Colorado, and opened fire, killing 12 classmates and a teacher, wounding 21 other students and then killing themselves. The incident at Columbine was the most severe of numerous instances of school violence. As a result, the Christian school movement, which had begun decades earlier, was strengthened, and the homeschool movement also experienced dramatic growth. In 2000, the American people had a choice to make. President Clinton's second term was nearly over, and a national election loomed on the horizon. Early in the race for the White House, Vice President Al Gore emerged as the top candidate on the Democratic ticket. The Republican Party nominated Texas Governor George W. Bush, son of George H.W. Bush, our 41st president. George W. Bush advocated compassionate conservatism based on his faith in the American people to do what is right without government aid. Bush campaigned on promises of reforming welfare, cutting taxes, and strengthening the military. On November 7, 2000, after the votes had been cast, each candidate needed to gain Florida to win a majority of the votes and claim the Oval Office. But the Florida vote was very close. The Gore campaign questioned the narrow margin of Bush's win in Florida. For the next 36 days, ballots were counted and recounted, counted and recounted. Finally, on December 12th, the Supreme Court ended the vote recountings. A day later, George W. Bush was declared the nation's 43rd president. Later, recounts verified that Bush had indeed won the majority of votes in Florida. So, since it's our state, Florida, let's talk about it for a second. So what was the issue? So, before we went all electronic on most of our ballots, the ballots in Florida were kind of like almost hole punched. And they had these little hanging bits of paper. You may see them sometimes when you rip a piece of paper out of a notebook, the little pieces that kind of hang on. Those are called chads. And the hole punch machine, sometimes those little chads wouldn't fall out, or they would get in the wrong spot and they would cause miscounts. So this was all over little pieces of paper that got hung up in some of the machines. Just a little bit of extra information for you. Well, that pretty much wraps up today's lesson. Short, sweet, to the point. Make sure you do comp check 14E, do evens only, just do 2 and 4. All right, guys, you have a safe weekend. I'll see you next week.